Meet Arthur, king of routine, slayer of toast. Arthur was, by all accounts, ordinary. He was the kind of person who blended into the background, unnoticed and unremarkable. He lived in a perfectly ordinary semi-detached house with perfectly ordinary beige walls and a cat named Mittens who was, you guessed it, perfectly ordinary. Mittens, like Arthur, enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. His days followed a predictable rhythm: wake up, battle the toaster, a formidable opponent, that toaster, work at the office, an accountant, another triumph of ordinariness, eat dinner, usually involving toast, surprisingly unburnt this time, watch telly, sleep. Each day was a mirror image of the last, a seamless loop of predictability. Excitement for Arthur was a freshly baked batch of biscuits from the shop down the road. The aroma of those biscuits was the highlight of his week. Adventure was venturing out in a new pair of slippers. The soft, cushioned feel of new slippers was Arthur's idea of luxury. Life was beige, like the walls. Beige was safe, beige was comfortable, beige was Arthur's world. One Tuesday, however, the universe decided Arthur had been ordinary long enough. It was as if the cosmos had grown tired of his mundane existence. This was the day the lottery ticket tucked behind the clock radio finally coughed up a win. A ticket he had bought on a whim, never expecting it to amount to anything. Not just any win, mind you. A win of the quit your job, buy a tropical island and never wear trousers again variety. It was the kind of win that could turn anyone's life upside down. Arthur did none of those things. Instead, he bought a telescope, a decision that puzzled everyone who knew him. Not just any telescope, mind you. This was a telescope so powerful it could spot a crumpet on the moon. It was a marvel of modern engineering, a gateway to the stars. Why, even Arthur couldn't fully explain that one. Perhaps it was a whim or maybe a deep-seated curiosity that had lain dormant for years. Perhaps a lifetime of beige had awakened in him a primal yearning for something more, something beyond the ordinary, something extraordinary. Little did Arthur know his life of extraordinary ordinariness was about to be launched into a whole new orbit. The telescope was about to become his portal to the unknown. All thanks to that telescope and a peculiar shimmer he spotted one night, hovering around the moon, a shimmer that defied explanation, that beckoned him to look closer, a shimmer that looked suspiciously like a spaceship. Arthur's beige world was about to be painted with the colors of the cosmos. The spaceship shimmer sparked something in Arthur, a curiosity that couldn't be satiated by biscuits or even crumpets. He had to know more. Thus began Arthur's descent into madness or brilliance, depending on how you look at it. He devoured every book, every article, every grainy documentary about space travel he could find. He learned about delta V and orbital mechanics. He even attempted to build a rocket in his garden shed. It achieved liftoff of about 3 feet before promptly combusting, taking the begonias with it. His obsession reached its peak when he stumbled upon a conspiracy theory blog claiming NASA was hiding evidence of alien life. Arthur, bless his cotton socks, believed it. And what's more, he decided to investigate. Armed with nothing but a head full of half-understood astrophysics and a toolbox filled with more enthusiasm than actual tools, Arthur set off to NASA. His plan? Bold. Some might say reckless, others might say utterly bonkers. He was going to break in. To Arthur's surprise, breaking into NASA was alarmingly easy. It turned out security guards had a soft spot for elderly gentlemen bearing gifts of homemade Victoria sponge cake. Who knew? Once inside, Arthur stumbled his way through corridors adorned with photos of astronauts and rockets, feeling like a child let loose in a sweet shop. Finally, he found it, a gigantic spacecraft gleaming under the harsh hangar lights. Was this it, the vessel from his lunar observations? Driven by a cosmic force he couldn't quite comprehend, Arthur clambered aboard. He fiddled with buttons, pulled levers, and generally poked around with the technical prowess of a chimpanzee let loose on a typewriter. And as luck would have it, or perhaps cosmic irony, he managed to accidentally launch the darn thing. Space, as it turned out, was not quite as exciting as the brochures made it out to be. For starters, there was no Wi-Fi. Second, the spaceship food was even worse than hospital food, which was quite an achievement. And third, Arthur was starting to suspect he might have made a terrible, terrible mistake. Section 4, Prisoner of Destiny, or How Arthur Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Laser Eyes. Arthur's joyride came to an abrupt end when his hijacked spaceship was intercepted by another, far more intimidating vessel. He had been cruising through the cosmos, enjoying the thrill of the stolen ship, when suddenly alarms blared and the ship shuddered violently. It looked like something out of a Star Wars film, all sharp angles and glowing menace. The vessel dwarfed his own, casting an ominous shadow that seemed to swallow the light around it. This, Arthur quickly gathered, was not a friendly visit from the Intergalactic Welcoming Committee. His heart pounded as he realized he was in serious trouble. He was dragged before the ship's inhabitants, a race of beings with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with an unsettling inner light. Their presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a stark reminder of how small and vulnerable he was in the vastness of space. They spoke a language that sounded like a dial-up modem having a nervous breakdown, but luckily one of them whipped out a universal translator device, because even evil overlords believe in clear communication, apparently. The device crackled to life, translating their harsh, guttural sounds into something Arthur could understand. It turned out Arthur had stumbled onto a prison ship, transporting intergalactic criminals to a maximum security asteroid somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy. The ship was a fortress, designed to contain the most dangerous beings in the universe. And wouldn't you know it? His accidental arrival had coincided with a jailbreak. Talk about bad timing. The corridors erupted into chaos as prisoners seized the opportunity to escape, turning the ship into a battleground. In the ensuing chaos, a stray energy blast from a disgruntled inmate caught Arthur square in the chest. The impact sent him sprawling, his body convulsing as the energy surged through him. He braced for oblivion, but instead, something rather peculiar happened. Instead of pain, he felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his limbs. His vision sharpened, his senses went into overdrive, and he swore he could hear the ship's computer humming from across the room. Every detail around him became crystal clear, as if he had been living in a fog and it had suddenly lifted. It seemed accidental electrocution was the universe's idea of a superpower starter kit. Arthur's body felt charged with energy, his mind racing to comprehend the changes. Arthur, it turned out, could now see through walls, hear whispers from across the galaxy, and shoot lasers from his eyes. He tested his new abilities, marveling at the precision and power he now possessed. You know, just your average Tuesday stuff. As he adjusted to his newfound powers, Arthur couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. From a joyride gone wrong to becoming a superpowered being, his life had taken a turn he never could have imagined. Section 5. Supercharged angst, the price of power is apparently existential dread. Now, you'd think a mild-mannered accountant suddenly developing superpowers would be thrilled, right? Well, Arthur was more terrified than anything. His life of beige ordinariness had not prepared him for this. He spent the next few days dodging laser blasts and teleporting space slugs while trying to come to terms with his newfound abilities. The ability to make toast without burning it would have been more useful at that point, frankly. His internal monologue went something like this. Laser eyes? Me, but I can barely work the tele-remote. What if I accidentally blow up a planet? What if I burn a hole in my favorite jumper with these laser eyes? What if I'm allergic to my own superpowers? Meanwhile, the escaped prisoners were running amok. The ship was falling apart around him, and the alien guards were starting to look at him like he was the solution to their problems. Arthur, meanwhile, just wanted a nice cup of tea and a sit-down, preferably somewhere not in imminent danger of being sucked out into the vast emptiness of space. Section 6. Escape from space jail. It's all fun and games, until someone loses a gravity generator. The nice cup of tea would have to wait. Arthur had been looking forward to it all day, a small comfort in the vast, cold expanse of space. The situation aboard the spaceship was going from bad to worse faster than you could say intergalactic extradition treaty. Alarms blared, lights flashed, and the ship's AI was frantically announcing system failures. The escaped prisoners, led by a particularly grumpy being with a penchant for dramatic pronouncements and a severe overbite, Arthur mentally nicknamed him Barry, were holding the remaining crew hostage. Barry's voice echoed through the corridors, making grandiose threats and demands. Barry, it seemed, had plans to use the ship to conquer a planet populated entirely by sentient cupcakes. Yes, cupcakes that could think, talk, and apparently be conquered. Arthur found this oddly specific, but then again he was currently shooting lasers from his eyes, so who was he to judge? His newfound powers were as baffling as they were useful. Driven by a sense of duty he didn't know he possessed, and a healthy dose of fear for the fate of those poor, defenseless cupcakes, Arthur decided it was time to stop panicking and start, well, superpowering. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. He teamed up with a group of prisoners who were actually quite nice once you got past the tentacles and the extra nostrils. They had their own reasons for wanting to stop Barry, and together they formed an unlikely alliance. Together, they devised a daring plan to retake the ship, which mostly involved Arthur distracting Barry with his laser eyes while the others did the heavy lifting. It was a risky plan, but it was their only shot. There was a lot of running down corridors, a near miss with a black hole. Arthur swore he lost a sock in that one. And a rather unfortunate incident involving a gravity generator that left everyone briefly experiencing life as a two-dimensional pancake. The ship's corridors were a blur of chaos and confusion. Let's just say it was a Tuesday Arthur wouldn't soon forget. As he finally sat down with his long-awaited cup of tea, he couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. It had been a wild ride, but they had made it through, and for now, that was enough.